Racewatch 12 with Cade Heidemann is brought to you by Builder's Service.
From the superspeedways to the road course, NASCAR's Xfinity and Cup Series took on the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas over the weekend with a few changes from last year. First major change was the track configuration. Drivers would start on the track like normal up until they got to the all-new Turn 6A, which shortcuts the course, eliminating turns 7 through 11 and dumps the drivers back out to Turn 12, shortening the course from 3.4 miles to just 2.4 and adding 27 extra laps to the race. The second change would be to the tire compound. Goodyear brought to the table a softer tire, which is a lot more susceptible to wear, ideally adding a whole new layer of skill needed to run at the front of this field, thus needing drivers to be very conscious of not using up their tires too soon. While the tire changes only affected those in the Cup garage, the new track configuration would be contested by both of the divisions featured over the weekend. So let's see how the Xfinity guys fared on the first road course race of the season. Ross Chastain, William Byron, and Riley Herbst all dropped down to mix it up in the second series, but in a strange turn of events, the Cup guys had a reason to be fearful of an Xfinity regular. You may remember last year, pole sitter Connor Zilisch debuted in the Xfinity Series, absolutely stomping the field at Watkins Glen. And now for the first time this season, he was in his element, putting the Cup guys on watch, not the other way around. Chastain started alongside Zilisch, but once they got past turn 1, the 88 car was gone. The first caution of the day comes for the fourth Cup Series driver to start here, Carson Hocevar, who got accidentally dumped by Jeb Burton, ending his day early. Then we get a second caution for Baltazar Leguizamon, which isn't all that big a story itself, until we see the 88 come down pit road. Unfortunately for Zilisch, he elected to pit while pit road was closed, which meant he would be dealt a penalty just before the end of stage 1. He would be forced all the way to the back on the stage break. And to close it out, the stage would end under caution with William Byron taking the green and white. With Zilisch out of the picture for now, we get some new leaders and a fun battle between Jesse Love, Taylor Gray, and Riley Herbst. The conclusion of Stage 2 had a whole different crop of drivers leading the field because of pitch strategy, with Harrison Burton being the best of the bunch, taking 10 stage points. Towards the end of this race, we ended with a duel between teammates. Connor Zilisch made up a lot of lost ground, being second behind his teammate Carson Guapel, who was having the drive of his life. 8 to go, Zilisch takes the lead from the 1, but Guapel would keep bringing the fight to the 88 until his car gives up on him, with his right front going down, taking him out of contention. Connor Zilisch would hold on to the lead for his first win of the season, taking a playoff spot with him. Now let's move on to the Cup Series, and as mentioned earlier, these guys are running an entirely different tire compound than what they ran here last year, with a heavy emphasis on tire wear. To start off this race, 2311 locked out the front row, with Tyler Reddick leading into turn 1, but exiting turn 1 was chaos at the hands of Ross Chastain, who dive-bombed all the way from the 5th row, damaging plenty of cars, but none to the point of DNF. Lap 5, 2311's 1-2 lead crumbles, first for Bubba Wallace, who gets hit with an off-course penalty for cutting turn 5. This leaves his teammate Tyler Reddick completely vulnerable to a fast-approaching Shane Van Gisbergen, who launches past the 45 at turn 6A without much trouble. Pitch strategy would end up playing to Wallace's favor anyway, which would allow the 23 to take another stage win for 2025. In stage 2, we get a new leader in the main pack, with Kyle Busch taking first over SVG. Shane would still be able to re-clear the 8 only a lap later, but this would be a sign of things to come. Later on, we get some trouble for Kyle Larson, who loses his front right tire after having some troubles on pit road unrelated to that tire. It won't create a caution, but it will create some post-race penalties. More on that later. Just like in the Xfinity race, the end of Stage 2 had a few other cars leading thanks to pitch strategy, with Ryan Preece being the one to take the green and white. Not long into the final stretch, we get a major caution and Trackhouse Implosion. Turn 19, Daniel Suarez, with no help, spins through the field, collecting his teammate Connor Zilisch, who is making his Cup debut and having an incredibly strong run, working through damage he sustained at the hands of his other teammate Ross Chastain all the way back on lap 1. Pit stops ran through around 24 to go, with SVG notably staying out the longest, giving him the freshest tires of the field, but even still the 88 was going the other direction, while the 8 car led the field for quite a few laps. Busch had clear track in front of him, but eventually he had a rearview mirror full of Christopher Bell, who had fresher tires and a better long-run car. Kyle tried everything he could to hold off Bell, but eventually the 8 car had nothing left to give, and Bell got by him with 6 to go. From here, Busch fell back, and a 4-way battle began between Christopher Bell, William Byron, Kyle Busch, and Tyler Reddick. Despite being absolutely hounded by 3 very good cars, Christopher Bell was able to hold them all off for a second win in a row. First on a superspeedway and now on a road course. We have a pretty big penalty report to get through this week, 2 from COTA and a verdict from a penalty all the way back in Daytona. First penalty was for Kyle Larson, whose tire came off on track. As is the standard procedure, the 2 crew members associated with putting the tire on are now suspended for 2 weeks. It is unlikely Hendrick will appeal this decision, and they will be receiving replacement crew members from Justin Haley's team. Second COTA penalty is for Austin Cindric, who intentionally dumped Ty Dillon on the front stretch. Penske is also unlikely to appeal this. The result of this penalty is a $50,000 fine and the loss of 50 drivers' points. Then finally, Chase Briscoe, who had his penalty from Daytona completely rescinded. He was initially penalized under the rule of modifying a single-source part because of an infraction found with his spoiler. However, on Wednesday, the appeals panel ruled that the infraction found was likely a result of proper installation and not modification, therefore giving him back his 100 points and reinstating his crew chief, James Small. These are the points as they stand after the penalties from Wednesday. Austin Cindric, who would have been up here, is now sitting 35th overall, and replacing him on this list is Chase Briscoe, up 30 spots and now completely out of the negatives. Back in contention once more. We have a new points leader this week too. William Byron secured the top spot after his runner-up finish at COTA. Meanwhile, climbing up the standings steadily is this week's winner Christopher Bell, who now sits 4th. Also worth mentioning is new 9th place Kyle Busch, who rocketed up here with his excellent race at COTA. If he keeps getting runs like those, we will likely see a win next to his name before long. And now here's your Wisconsin driver update from COTA. Just like Daytona, we had some very high highs and very tragic lows. So let's start with the lowest point of this report. Parker Retzlaff unfortunately did not qualify for the Xfinity race at COTA. I wouldn't think of this as purely a skill issue because Parker was not the only Alpha Prime racing car to DNQ. His teammate Brad Perez also didn't make the show. And while Brandon Poole in the 44 did make it, it was only just barely, qualifying 32nd. Next up, finishing 22nd was Josh Bilicki, up 4 spots from his qualifying position in 26th. It is likely he could have done better, however for the 3rd week in a row, Bilicki had a run-in with Chris Wright that may have cost him some time. Regardless, it certainly could have gone worse. Then all the way up in 3rd place, putting in another solid day's work, was Sam Mayer. We know him to be a good road racer, having multiple wins to his credit already, so seeing him up here isn't a huge surprise. A solid points day for a driver who is looking for his first win on his new team. There was no Wisconsin representation in the Cup Series, however you will be seeing all 3 of these guys again next week at Phoenix. For Racewatch 12, I'm Cade Heidemann.